In the Swiss Alps, a village was evacuated 9 days before the mountain above it collapsed. 300 residents walked out in time. The village did not survive what came next. 90% of Blatten was buried under rock, ice, and mud in roughly 40 seconds. 1 year later, the same valley is now watching a second glacier one that has shown signs of instability in recent months. The original disaster, the Birch Glacier collapse of May 28, 2025, is now a year in the past. The economic cost has reached roughly 255 million Swiss francs. Residents are still rebuilding. And as of this week, Swiss authorities in Valais have confirmed that the Oigschtchummun Glacier above the Fafleralp, only a few kilometers from where Blatten once stood, is being closely monitored after showing signs of instability since winter. This is not a new collapse. It is a continuation of the same kind of mountain risk. This is the reason the story is being told now. The Birch Glacier collapse was not the closing chapter of the Lötschental Valley's mountain instability. It was the moment that revealed it. 12 months later, the same monitoring infrastructure that saved 300 lives is being focused on a different glacier. One person died in the original disaster, a 64-year-old shepherd who had returned to an area outside the evacuation zone. Blatten itself is still mostly buried. Many former residents are living in a temporary wooden hotel called Momentum, built in 105 days. And the question now is whether the second glacier will behave the way the first one did, or whether the monitoring will catch something different in time. To understand what was lost, you have to start with what Blatten was. Blatten was a small alpine village in the canton of Valais in southern Switzerland. Roughly 300 residents. A few hundred buildings, homes, the village church, several hotels, including the Hotel Edelweiss, run by the Kalbermatten family for 3 generations, family farms with livestock, the school, and the road connecting Blatten to Wiler and Ride. Tourism was part of the local economy. Many properties had been in the same families for generations. It was not just infrastructure that ended up under debris. It was a community. Above the village, the Kleines Nesthorn, a peak of fractured gneiss and amphibolite, had been shedding rock for years. Since 2019, those rockfalls had been landing on the Birch Glacier below, loading the ice with debris. The glacier had been monitored with a webcam since 2013. Between 2017 and 2023, instruments measured it sliding by as much as 70 meters under the accumulating weight. In May 2025, slope deformation data crossed thresholds that suggested imminent failure. Swiss authorities understood the risk. On May 19, 2025, they ordered Blatten evacuated. The warning system worked. Nobody could move the village. The evacuation order on May 19th gave residents a few days to leave. What that meant in practice was 300 families making the kinds of decisions that nobody prepares for. What to take, what to leave, which documents, which medicines, which family photos, which business records. The Kalbermattens closed the Hotel Edelweiss. The Ritlers led their sheep down toward Weiler. Elderly residents were helped into vehicles by neighbors. Hotel owners locked doors without knowing if they were locking them for a week or forever. And then the mountain did not collapse. Days passed. The instruments kept recording. The webcam kept watching. Some residents asked whether they would be allowed to go back. Some hoped the worst had passed. The Swiss authorities did not lift the closure. The scientists could see the danger building. They could not give a precise hour. The slope deformation data was crossing thresholds. The seismic signals were growing. The moment of failure remained inside a window of uncertainty that no instrument could shrink. Warning is not the same thing as certainty. At 3:24 in the afternoon on May 28th, the window closed. The Birch Glacier failed. In roughly 40 seconds, more than 9 million cubic meters of rock, ice, and mud accelerated down the slope at 200 kilometers per hour. The flow dropped 1,200 meters and ran nearly 200 meters up the opposite valley wall. It registered as a 3.1 magnitude earthquake. It blocked the Lonza River. Approximately 90% of Blatten was buried or destroyed. The shepherd outside the evacuation zone was killed. The reported damage would later reach about 255 million Swiss francs. The collapse was not simply a glacier melting, it was a mountain system failing. High alpine permafrost, the frozen ground at high elevations, holds fractured rock together. As that permafrost warms, the frozen support weakens. Rockfalls become more frequent. The debris lands on the glaciers below. The added weight changes how those glaciers move. The compression generates internal warming, producing meltwater inside the ice. The meltwater lubricates the bed. The glacier accelerates. And under the right combination of load, slope angle, and internal pressure, the final failure does not happen in slow motion. It happens in seconds. There is a hidden twist in this mechanism. Debris on the surface of a glacier insulates the ice from direct sunlight, which can slow surface melting. So a debris-covered glacier can look more protected. But that same debris is also load. The protection at the surface can mask the destabilization underneath. This was the situation above Blatten. That same situation may now be developing on a different glacier in the same valley. 12 months after the Birch Glacier collapse, the canton of Valais is closely monitoring a second glacier in the Lötschental, the Oigschtchummun. Its front sits at roughly 2,600 meters above the Fafleralp, only a few kilometers from where Blatten once stood. Since winter, observers have documented what local authorities describe as individual breaks on the glacier surface. The glacier has been advancing toward the valley. On May 9th, it was mapped with LiDAR. On May 13th, a dedicated surveillance camera was installed. The cantonal road between Blatten and Fafleralp could be affected. Summer tourism reopening is scheduled for July 4th under monitoring. This needs to be said carefully. The Oigschtchummun Glacier is not another confirmed Blatten. The signs being watched are not a collapse prediction. There is no village of 300 people directly underneath it. The area is largely uninhabited. The official risk assessment is described as limited. But this is exactly how modern mountain risk works. Scientists do not wait for certainty. They watch movement, cracks, collapses, acceleration, and thresholds. They make decisions under uncertainty because waiting too long can be fatal. This is also why what happened in Blatten matters far beyond Switzerland. Around the world, many high mountain communities sit in similar geographies, villages below glaciers, towns at the foot of steep rock faces, roads cut across unstable slopes. The same combinations of frozen rock, retreating ice, and accumulating debris that produced the Birch Glacier collapse exist in the Alps, the Andes, the Himalayas, and Alaska. When permafrost weakens and glacier systems change, the risk is not always gradual. Sometimes the system fails suddenly. The Birch Glacier collapse was not a slow retreat. It was a system that crossed a threshold in 40 seconds. The uncomfortable truth is not that the scientists failed. They succeeded in the most important way: they helped save hundreds of lives. But Blatten also showed the limit of prediction. The danger was visible enough to evacuate the village, but not predictable enough to know exactly when the collapse would happen, how completely the glacier would fail, or how far the consequences would reach. Modern monitoring can save lives. It cannot make mountains fully predictable. As of today, the Birch Glacier cannot collapse again at the same magnitude. The Kleines Nesthorn is still moving. The Oigschtchummun is being watched. The survivors are still rebuilding. If Blatten is considered a success because the people survived, but a disaster because the village was lost, What does that tell us about every other mountain community living below ice, rock, and permafrost beginning to change? The warning saved the people of Blatten. It could not save the village. And 1 year later, the same valley is watching the mountain again. If this story is worth telling, subscribe. We cover more of these every week.